welcome to the August 15th, 2018 Board of County Commissioners meeting. I'm Kate Flavin, Public Information Officer with Sedgwick County. Commissioners, since today is Budget Adoption Day, I just have one announcement and a reminder for you. As of today, residents who wish to tag newly purchased vehicles, they can do so at any of the Sedgwick County tag offices. And once you register the vehicle, it will take then 10 days approximately 10 days to receive your tag from the state. This is a change in process, so you will no longer receive a tag right when you register at the tag office. However, that will then come from the state. And just a reminder, Commissioners, for your meetings today, we have several meeting minutes to consider, a few items related to advisory boards, like we talked about earlier, the adoption of the 2019 budget for fire and for Sedgwick County, a public hearing to adopt the International Residential Code, donations for COMCARE, Community Crisis Center, and 3 grants, one related to COMCARE, one for the criminal justice system, and one for the Sheriff's Office. And finally, there will be a review of bid board items. So with that, Chairman, I will let you kick off the meeting.
Well, thank you, Kate. Thank you very much. And I want to welcome all the folks that are here in the audience and those that are joining us online. Today we're going to do things a little bit different than we normally do. Normally we start off with a Board of County Commissioners county meeting, but today we're going to start off with the fire meeting. And it's going to be short because all we really need to do is do a couple minutes and pass a budget for the fire department. From there we'll adjourn that and go into our regular meeting. So with that, I'd like to call to order the governing body of Fire District Number 1 for Wednesday, August 15th, 2018. Madam Clerk, first item.
Invocation to be led by Reverend Gary Brooks, Aldergate United Methodist Church. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Let us pray. You have blessed us, O God, with another day of opportunity and hope. May the words of our mouths and the actions of our lives bring glory to you as each of us serve with the skills and giftedness you have bestowed upon us. Bless this meeting of the County Commission. Bless the commissioners and the staff that support them. That the people of this great county may be served well. Grant wisdom and insight to our commissioners as they make important decisions this day. And, O God, in the measure that we honor you, bless us and grant us enough green pastures and enough still waters to keep us restored and fill our cups to overflowing with goodness and mercy, that we might dwell in the house of the Lord forever. These things we pray in the name of the God of peace and love. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reverend, thank you very much for being here today. We sincerely appreciate it. Next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Present.
Commissioner Ansah?
Present.
Commissioner Howell?
Present.
Commissioner Unruh?
Present.
Chairman Dennis?
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
I have no one signed up to speak on the fire public agenda. We do have one person when we get to Board of County Commissioners. Does anyone here wish to speak on the fire public agenda? Only fire. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, next item.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, fire meeting minutes of July 11th, 2018.
Commissioners, everyone has had a chance to look at the minutes and we've all had a chance to review them for July 11th, 18th, and 25th. I make a motion that we approve all 3.
Second.
We have a motion and 2 seconds. Oh, it should be good. See any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ansah?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
New business. Item D, adoption of the 2019 Sedgwick County Fire District Number 1 budget.
Commissioners, Mike Scholes, County Manager. The 2019 recommended Fire District 1 operating budget totals $20,487,728. It will be supported with a property tax levy of $17,220,037. which will require a mill levy of approximately 18.371 mills based on the estimated assessed valuation and subject to technical adjustments. The public was invited to participate in 2 public hearings, a social media town hall, and comment on the online forum at www.sedgwickcounty.org. I recommend you adopt the resolution for the 2019 Fire District 1 operating budget.
Thank you. Lindsay, do you have anything for us?
No, Commissioners, just prepared to handle any discussion.
Very good. Well, we've been discussing this for some time. Is there any discussion from the commissioners before we have a motion? Commissioner Ranzow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We actually have 2 options today with respect to the fire budget and the mill levy. We've had some discussion in previous weeks, but citizens need to know that with respect to the fire district, the assessed value has grown about 5% this last year. Far outpaced inflation, and so we can maintain the current mill levy, or under the truth and taxation, we can lower that mill levy a little bit, and that's what I support today. Current budget is based on keeping the mill levy higher than what I think it needs to be, and I can't support that. We have had in the past some issues with the fire district budget, and we were on a track to become insolvent, but we made some changes, and now the new projections, even with the lower mill levy, by 2023, we'd have a balance of $9.6 million. We'll have that even though we're planning on filling 6 positions that have been closed for a number of years. We're planning on building a new fire station out in Andale. So we're able to not only build those things and increase staffing, we're able to accumulate a very large ending balance of $9.6 million, even if we do the lower mill levy. So that's what I will be supportive of today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner Unruh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lindsay, the budget that recommendation that the manager read has the support and approval of the finance department and our management staff?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's it, not increasing the mill levy at all, just keeping it level it to what it was last year?
Yes, sir. And actually, after technical adjustment, it is slightly lower. It is what the Commission intended to adopt last year at 18.371 mils.
So in actuality, it is just 0.002 less or something like that?
Approximately.
Okay. Well, I will be supportive of finance and staff recommendation on the fire district budget.
Thank you. Any further comments? Lindsay, I got a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
The first one is the assumptions that Commissioner Ranzow read are if everything stays the same. If Wichita decides to annex large portions of property in the next couple of years, which they have the opportunity to do, does that impact those projections that Commissioner Ranzow read?
Yes, it would.
Say Spirit and Textron were annexed, how much would that impact us?
What I know are the approximately 4 industrial corridors that are out there that could be annexed would total about $2 million in lost operating revenue per year.
That's per year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that would significantly impact our final numbers that were quoted by Commissioner Ranzow.
Yes, sir.
Also, this 0.24, what I understand is that's like $4.14 per year on a $100,000 house.
On a $150,000 home, it is. Yes, sir.
House.
That's right.
Okay. So they may be able to buy a Starbucks coffee with the savings we're giving. I strongly proponent of providing tax breaks and doing everything we can to all of our citizens, but I'm also a strong proponent of making sure that we have a safe, secure fire department that's able to respond to different contingencies in the county, and that's our job as the Board of Fire District number 1. And it might be good in an election year to say I reduce taxes, and you could actually say that if we voted to reduce it by 0.24. You could put it on your palm card and say I reduced taxes this year. But the reality is that this reduces taxes of $4.14 on a $150,000 home. And the reality is that we don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years anyway, depending on annexations and other contingencies, or if we have, if heaven forbid, one of our fire trucks disintegrates somehow, and we have to spend $500,000 to $1 million to buy a new fire truck, we have a lot of contingencies that we need to be prepared for. So I will be supportive of leaving the mill levy the same. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, a few years ago, we were looking at fire district was basically going to cross into the red pretty quickly. We had to make some structural changes to how we did this, and we did that. And it was uncomfortable. We did make those changes, and thankfully the economy has picked up, and things are, you know, projections right now are looking really good, I think. We're not in the same position we were just a couple of years ago, but whether this is a tax increase or tax decrease, people could look at this a number of different ways. Although what we're talking about potentially is lowering the mill levy back down to 18.131. That still produces more revenue than last year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you please tell, do you have about how much money more that would be this year than last year?
Yes, if you will give me one moment, if maybe there's another question you could ask while I
Okay, so,
look up
yeah,
that
so
number.
again, the mill levy is really just a factor of the formula, and it's based on assessed valuation, which we have a little control of. I would also make the argument that the public safety is not under the tax lid. We can change this at any time. We can monitor our performance and monitor our ending balance and monitor our projected spending. But right now, the 131 provides enough revenue to run the fire district, including the restoration of 6 firefighters and a new fire station, and with healthy balances going forward. So we're not, the additional revenue just simply pads the budget, adds more to the ending balance. It doesn't really provide something we're not going to do anyway. So if we lower the mill levy to 1.131, it's still more revenue than last year. And my other concern is this, that the fire district, in my opinion, is paying a lot of tax, 18.131 or 18.371 mils for a single public service. Unfortunately, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but a very small portion of Sedgwick County citizens are actually inside the fire district. But yet we still provide services to people who are benefits to people outside the fire district, and it's a bit of in my opinion, it's very unfair. And to continue to raise taxes, needlessly raise taxes, excessively raise taxes on that is adding pressure for us to see people want to pull out of the fire district, and which makes it even harder for it to be sustained over time. So, okay, it looks like you have your answer to the question.
I do, sir. So we are projecting, for the current year that the fire district will collect about $16.04 million in revenues from property taxes. If we were to reduce this levy today, or if commissioners were to reduce the levy by $225,000, we would anticipate bringing in $16,564,000, or a difference of about $520,000. If we did increase that levy, that would add an additional $225,000 to that $520,000 figure.
So already adding $520,000 with it being lowered to 131, and if we leave it at 371, it's another 222 on top of that.
Correct.
So again, so we're going 3/4 the way there by lowering the mill levy, and basically the reason this number, the 131 came from trying to keep this in line with, I think, CPI, or what was the basis for 131?
The 18.131 mils, is that what you're referring to, sir? That would allow us to not have to do a truth and taxation publication.
All right, and truth and taxation, just for everyone's knowledge, it just says we're increasing taxes. That's what that means. And so if we have reason to increase taxes, then we should do that. But if we don't have reason to increase taxes, then we shouldn't. And that's exactly what the truth and taxation law is for us, to notify the public, we just raised your taxes, and we need to vote and make that clear to the people. So to avoid that and not to do tax increase when we don't really have a need for it, we need to lower the mill levy back down to 18.131. So I would support a motion to lower this back down to 18.131.
Thank you. Further comments? Commissioner Unruh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I would like to go ahead and keep us moving here, and so I would like to make a motion to approve the manager's recommendation. And Mr. Counselor, do I need to read that again, or can I say that I move the manager's recommendation?
I think you can just do the manager's recommendation.
I so move.
We have a motion. I'll second the motion. Discussion? Commissioner Ranzau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to make a substitute motion. I do support the items that are in the budget. but I don't support taxing people more than what's necessary. The idea that Spirit may not be in the fire district in a few years, I think, even though that's technically a possibility, I don't think anybody in here actually believes that's going to happen. And beyond that, if that did happen, then that would be an issue far beyond this mill levy. Would not even be a big issue. Okay, but we have to. We just can't tax the people more than what we need to. The assessed value went up, and the taxpayers need to reap some of that benefit. And the improvement in our fire district budget has been incredible over the last few years. We've gotten where we need to be. I mean, throughout the last several years, I had voted sometimes for the fire budget and sometimes against, and I had really pushed hard for us to improve the fiscal position of the fire budget. We've done that. Staff has worked hard. We've made some tough decisions here as a county commission, and I think it's time to return some of this to the taxpayer. The problem is just because staff recommends that we continue to tax people doesn't mean we have to. We have to get over this idea that the government it's okay for them to tax beyond what's really necessary. If every taxing entity that we are subjected to takes that same attitude, then that's how we end up in problems. So I'm very comfortable with the lower mill levy, so I want to make a substitute motion that we reduce the property tax mill levy included in 2019 Sedgwick County Fire District 1 from the published amount of $17,220,037 to, did I say that right?
17 million.
For $17,220,073 to $16,994,713, which is approximately equivalent to 18.131 mils based on the estimated assessed valuation and subject to technical adjustments.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be supportive of this substitute motion only based on the fact that I believe that Commissioner Ranzel's right. We don't know what the future holds for the fire district. I've been a big proponent of the truth in taxation issues that were in Topeka, and I gave a lot of thought to this, but we're talking about approximately $225,000. We have plenty of money in the reserves, and as Commissioner House said, we can always come back and look at that if something were to happen, like you mentioned, needing a new fire truck or some large expense. We can always come back and review this, but that is why I'll be supportive of this motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Unruh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not be in support of the motion. I think that one of the things that Commissioner O'Donnell said is true. We don't know what the future holds, and in the best judgment of our finance division and our management staff, this is a reasonable mill levy, which is slightly less than last year and has been alluded to previously. The owner of a piece of property that's valued at $500,000, it amounts to $13.80 worth of tax for the year. I think that person would be most agreeable to pay that $13.80, which is same mill levies he had last year, with the full knowledge then that helps ensure that we will be able to provide fire protection no matter what the contingency might be next year. So I will not be supportive, but I would want to be on record that I certainly do support the organization and the firemen of our fire district. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Unruh. Well, it's obvious that this motion is going to pass. I will be in opposition to it from some of the reasons I've already stated. We brought this up at my Citizens Advisory Board, and they believe that it should remain the same, that the amount of savings is not significant. It's going to be significant to people that are campaigning this year because they can truly say, yes, we reduced taxes. Did it impact any people? I don't believe that it probably will, but we will vote today to reduce taxes in Fire District Number 1. Do we know what the future is going to bring? No. If the future bodes poorly, which it very possibly could, I guess in an off-election year, why we can raise taxes again. So that's where we're set right now. So, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
No.
Chairman Dennis?
No. Commissioner Ranzo?
I think then, as a result of that passing, I need to make a second
You do need to make a second motion.
I move we adopt the resolution for the 2019 Fire District 1 budget that includes an operating budget of $20,487,728. The total operating budget is partially funded with a property tax levy of $16,994,713, which is approximately equivalent to 18.131 mills based on the estimated assessed valuation, subject to review and technical adjustments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the second motion? Commissioner Ranzo?
Well, I just want to clarify, I support this today because it's the right thing to do. Any inference that this is a political year decision is outright wrong. If I was worried about politics, there's a lot of other votes that I would have voted differently on throughout the year, I can assure you that. But this is the sort of thing, we have, not all the commissioners that are present today were present during the years when we really struggled with the fire district budget, and we were on a path to insolvency, and we have made significant improvements. We're to the point now, I'm very confident that we won't need to raise taxes, that if we do have a fire truck issue, we still have more than adequate funds to cover all that. So this is simply the right thing to do, I believe, in this year's budget, and that's why I'm supporting this. So,
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I have one, going back for just a moment, I have a question for Commissioner Unruh and how he calculated $13.80 more per year. I'm still trying to find out how he calculated that. But nevertheless, you know, this is, some people look at the mill levy and they think that is a tax increase or tax decrease. Politicians for years have accepted what they call a level mill levy and say they don't raise taxes, and yet assessed valuations go up. And many times, for years and for a very long time, assessed valuation goes up much faster than the economy itself. And so as a result, people are putting a larger share of their money into government coffers. We can talk about the mill levy, but at the end of the day, the dollars is what matters. We're getting over $500,000 more in this budget, and we're going to fund some things we haven't funded for a long time. We have some planned spending that just shows a dedication to public safety. We love our public safety. They do a great job. We want to fund them. They deserve raises. We want to be fully staffed, and we have to have health reserves in case something bad happens. We can do all those things with this level of budget. And so we do support public safety. In case there's an argument that we don't support them, we do. We love what they do. We need them to be supported. But this budget does do that. What we don't want to do is increase taxes. If you call 18.371 level taxes, it's not. That's why truth in taxation law exists. It's to be clear to the taxpayers that we just raised your taxes. What we're doing today is trying to keep that in check. If we have a need for more money, that's fine. We can talk about that. We'll pass a budget that has a tax increase if we need to. But that's not today. We have everything we need in this budget to support public safety and do a good job at that. And so, again, if you want to call this a tax decrease, that's fine. But really what this is $500,000 more than last year. And we're just lowering this just enough not to have to call it a tax increase. So I call this funding that's equivalent with last year, and it's basically including more money based on the economy's growth itself. That's not necessarily a tax decrease. It depends on how you want to look at it. But I don't want someone to come away and say we don't support public safety, because that's just not true. We do. We love them, we appreciate them, and we need to support them. And when we are committed to that, and this budget can make that happen again this year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing we've already voted on this, didn't we?
No, we haven't.
Okay, good. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Other.
Commissioner Unruh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a comment in relative to some of the controversy that we've had in the fire district with recent incident that involved our mutual aid and automatic aid with the city of Wichita. there's been considerable conversations going on between elected folks and also with our manager and city manager, with our fire chief and the city fire chief. And I would just happy to report that progress is being made. I think that they've come to a consensus, although we have not seen documentation, haven't voted on it or anything, but I believe that our mutual aid agreement that's 25 years old is going to be updated to such a degree that we both will be satisfied and willing to be supportive of that and work in good collaboration as we go forward. So there's been some comments made by both sides, I think, relative to this. I just want to say that we're working our way through it, and I believe that we're going to have a good agreement that's very positive for the citizens of Sedgwick County.
Thank you. Anything else another on the fire district? Seeing nothing, I'd like to adjourn the fire district number 1 board meeting and call together the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Wednesday, August 15th, 2018. Madam Clerk, next item.
Roll call. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Present.
Commissioner Ranzau?
Present.
Commissioner Howell?
Present.
Commissioner Unruh?
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
Thank you. We have one individual signed up to speak on public agenda, Mr. Jim Burgess. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Burgess, and as before, I will disclose that I am on the board of the board for Derby Senior Center. I'm also on the Advisory Council on Aging for the Sedgwick County. I am speaking today, as always, as a private citizen. I'm going to be very brief because I know there's a long agenda. It's come to my attention that the $113,000 that we have requested as extra funding for senior centers is the equivalent of a 23-cent tax on a $100,000 home. That's less than 1/4, one little quarter per year that it would take to fund all 5 or 6 of the senior centers that have requested funding. If you happen to be well-to-do, have a $400,000 house, it'll cost you 92 cents. That's less than $1. I can't imagine that anyone would oppose spending less than 1/4 per year to ensure that their mom and dad or that their grandma and grandpa had a safe place to socialize, eat, exercise, or seek needed information. So I'm asking you again, gentlemen, if you would please fund the money that's required for the full funding of the formula for senior centers as is in the agreement that they have signed. Do the right thing, gentlemen. Here's my fair share. It's there, it's yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the public agenda this morning? Anyone else? Thank you. Next item, please.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, regular meeting minutes of July 11, 2018.
Thank you. Commissioners, you've all had an opportunity to review the minutes for July 11th, July 17th, July 18th, and July 25th. I move that we approve all 4 of those.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzau?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Appointments. Item E, accept the resignation of Bernard Patrick from the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department Board of Appeals of Plumbers and Gas Fitters.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Yost, County Councilor. Items E and F can probably be handled at the same time. Item E is the resignation of Mr. Bernard J. Patrick from the MABCD Board of Appeals of Plumbers and Gas Fitters. He had held the mechanical engineer position on that board. No replacement has been named at this time. And then item F is the resignation of Mr. Glenn Steele from the 3rd District Citizens Advisory Board. No replacement for Mr. Steele just yet. And I would recommend adoption of both of these resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Yost. Well, Mr. Steele serves on my advisory board for the citizens in District 3. I sincerely appreciate his service during the time he was able to serve. However, his job is taking him away from home quite frequently, so he can't continue to serve. I want to make sure that we express our sincere gratitude for his service. Also, Mr. Bernard Patrick for the Building Construction Department. We sincerely appreciate his service also. and I move that we accept these two resignations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Item G, resolution appointing Kent Koster to fill the position of treasurer for Sedgwick County, Morton Township.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Yost, County Councilor. This is a resolution appointing Kent Koster to the treasurer position for Morton Township to fill a vacancy created by the passing of Mr. Richard Rosenhagen. Morton Township is in Commissioner Dennis's district, and he's recommending that Mr. Koster be appointed. This term would expire on January 11, 2021. It's my understanding that Mr. Koster is not expected to be here this morning to be sworn in, but I would urge adoption of the resolution.
Thank you very much. And I have recommended this appointment to treasurer for Morton County Township for Kent Koster. I appreciate his volunteering to serve in this role. It's unfortunate that we have to replace him due to the death of Mr. Rosenhagen, but we do need to make this appointment. So I move that we appoint Kent Koster.
Second.
Koster. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
New business, item H, adoption of the 2019 Sedgwick County budget and the capital improvement program.
Commissioners, Mike Scholes, County Manager. Sedgwick County's 2019 recommended operating budget totals $419,042,893. It will be supported with a property tax levy of $142,756,344, which is approximately equivalent to 29.359 mils, based on the estimated assessed valuation and subject to technical adjustments. The public was invited to participate in 2 public hearings, a social media town hall, and comment on the online forum at www.sedgwickcounty.org. I recommend you adopt the resolutions for the 2019 Sedgwick County operating budget and the capital improvement program, and authorize the chairman to sign.
Thank you. We've had public comment on this 2 times in present. We've had public comment again today. We've had online comments. I think that we're now at the point where we need to start passing a budget. So do I have any recommendations from the board? Commissioner Ranzo.
Well, I'll say in general, I'm supportive of the budget. Although, do I have issues with some of the CIP issues, bond funding, and things like that? We can't completely take out the CIP separately, but we do have an option here to do two adoptions, which is what I'd like to do, or 2 motions, one of which would be passing the main operating budget, which I'd be supportive of, and then have a separate discussion on some bond-funded, externally funded CIP projects and some issues that resolve around there. But in general, I think we've, over the last couple of years, made some improvements on our financial outlook there, again, as a result of multiple years of working and making some decisions, and then when you add that with the increased evaluation, that's helping us improve our financial outlook.
So do you have a motion?
Well, I guess I can. Where's Lindsay? I am correct, so I want to do the adoption number 1 now, right? If that's...
Yes. Commissioner, on your motions, you should have one that says, if you want to adopt the 2 separately,
Yes.
you want to do adoption 1.
You want me to make a motion now, before any discussion?
We need a motion so we can discuss.
All right, I'll move we adopt the resolution for the 2019 Sedgwick County budget that includes an operating budget of $419,042,893 and the 2019 cash funded capital improvement program of $13,789,137. The total operating budget is partially funded with a property tax levy of $142,756,344. which is approximately equivalent to 29.359 mils based on the estimated assessed valuation subject to review and technical adjustments.
Okay. I'll second the motion. Discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Unruh.
Lindsay, from our financial management standpoint, is this something, this is not the motion that you supported or that you wanted to advance, is that, or am I not saying, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, this just has to do with whether or not we bond our road and bridges. That's
Right. So the motions that likely will follow here, that adoption 1 would be adopting an operating budget with the cash-funded capital improvement program, because that is embedded in the operating budget. The second motion that would come up would only be relevant to the debt-funded and external-funded capital improvement program. Historically, we have done the single motion with a single resolution. Last year, we did take this approach to break it into 2 parts. As long as the budget is adopted at the end of the day, though, I am perfectly happy.
well, okay, so if we were to approve this motion here, we could then, the subsequent motion on the CIP, we could, if we weren't in favor of that, then we could approve a motion that says that, I mean, how would that language read? That if we wanted to go ahead and defeat Commissioner Ranzau's position and use bonded funding? What
I think
motion
at
we
this point, if you wanted to do that, there would be a substitute motion, which would be the motion that's listed at the bottom of your sheet that says Sedgwick County budget, and it's a single operating budget and a single resolution. And we could be prepared to accommodate that if that's the wish of the commission.
All right. I understand that, and I'm prepared to make a substitute motion. However, if this motion prevails and we still want to bond fund those long-term road projects and bridge projects, what does that motion look like?
That would be your adoption 2 motion on here, and it would solely address the bond funded and external funded capital improvement projects. And there is a second resolution that's attached to your backup that would have to be passed as well.
Okay, but that is not the motion that Commissioner Ranzau is going to follow up with, is it?
I don't know.
Well, let me comment. Those 2 together get you to where you want. So I think we agree on this part, and then we may have some discussion on that other part.
Correct.
And there may be a substitute motion, or you may just make that motion, and I might just vote against it. But I haven't got that far yet.
All right, well, then I'll just offer a substitute motion, Mr. Chairman. And I would move that we adopt the resolution for the 2019 Sedgwick County budget that includes an operating budget of $419,042,893, and that the 2019 capital improvement program of $25,872,231. The total operating budget is partially funded with property tax levy of $142,756,344, which is approximately equivalent to 29.359 mils based on the estimated assessed valuation, subject to review and technical adjustments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on a substitute motion. Any discussion? Commissioner Howell.
Well, I was wanting to make sure that I'm going to have a chance later on to move some money around within the budget, so this is not going to impact my ability to do that later. Is that correct?
I believe at this point the motion is to adopt a budget, and so if it was adopted right now that way, then we would need to take some maybe a different approach in the motions you may want to bring. So I would recommend you do your motions before this budget is actually adopted.
Yeah. So I didn't really get a chance to do that, and Mr. Chairman, I have some motions I wanted to consider before we got to this point, and unfortunately, we went right to the end, if you will. So I don't know that how to handle that at this point, but I've got a couple of motions I've been talking about for a while on senior centers, and I want to have some brief discussion about that. I think the seniors that are here and showed up at our budget hearing deserve a chance to hear us deliberate and vote on things that they care about. So I have some motions prepared, actually 3 of them. I can go through them very quickly. We can dispense with that, and then at that point get on to adopting the actual budget. So Lindsay, I just ask it again, if we go forward right now, do I still have a chance to to make the motions I need to make in terms of.
I'll defer to legal if they want to answer this question. Otherwise, I have a proposal.
Mr. Yost?
We have never adopted any parliamentary rules, and so there's no limit on substitute motions and that sort of thing. I would recommend that before we get to the vote on the overall budget, that we go ahead and take up any amendments to that. Robert's rules wouldn't allow that, but I think we don't have Robert's rules here. And so I think if Commissioner Howell or any other commissioner has an actual amendment to the budget, that we should probably take that up before we do the overall budget adoption vote.
Should we table this motion, or just should we table it?
But there is a motion and a substitute motion. on
There
the
is.
floor. So are you suggesting leaving those, pardon me, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Adler?
But there's no limit on how many, I mean, they can do a substitute on the substitute in the absence of any rule prohibiting that.
In the absence of rules prohibiting it, we can be
Yes.
here a long time.
It could be.
Okay. Okay, that's fine with me, but I mean, just want to be clear.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say, we actually have done that in the last 3.5 years I've been here. We've had a couple times where we've had a substitute with another substitute. We've accepted that in the past. So I'm not going to belabor the moment. I'll just make a couple of quick points. We did have a couple of public budget hearings, and last Thursday we actually had 70. Actually, by the newspaper, they said we had 80 seniors show up. We heard from 26 different people. I think all of them except for 2 were speaking on senior center funding and aging programs. And you know what? This is one of those things where I feel like in 2015 we were criticized for because we essentially reconsidered the zoo funding agreement, and that was a very difficult year, and we got through that, and the zoo's doing great, and they're thriving. That's the word they use. But that was a very difficult time, and one of the arguments that was made at that time was the county should just keep their word. And there was a clause in that contract that says if you need to cancel it for some reason, you could do that. And so we had to take that option at that time. But we have a new agreement, and everybody's happy. It passed unanimously, and the zoo is thriving once again. We do have an agreement that was passed in the middle of 2000s, and again, I'm not sure the exact year, but it was an agreement. It wasn't a contract. It was a performance measures funding agreement that was hammered out by commissioners at that time, and Commissioner Unruh, you were here at that time. It was a very long process to get this done, but anyway, the community all agreed this is what we were going to do. It was an agreement. It was based on whether there's adequate funding to fund this. It's a performance-based funding agreement, if you will. We have, I believe, 6 senior centers that actually have demonstrated performance measures that would qualify them for increases in funding this year if we have the revenues. I think we do have the revenues. I've looked at the budget very closely. We actually have the revenues in this budget to fund this if we want to, and so that's really a political decision. But nevertheless, this agreement does exist, and I like to reflect back on something that happened in 1982. In 1982, there was a ballot measure. Whether you like the results or not, doesn't really much matter. The people spoke. 66.4% of the people voted for language that would authorize the county to levy a tax up to $1 million to fund senior programs for the elderly. It's essentially how it's worded. It was clear at the time, and I went back and looked. I spent several hours doing research on this, went back and looked at all the articles both before and after that ballot measure passed, and it was very clear to everyone. And at the time, there was lots of editorials. There was all kinds of documents from staff writers that were explaining what this was supposed to do and why. And there was no question that this would be a tax increase. Anyway, it passed by 66.4%. The first year we had a budget after that, we put in .700 mil into that category from Sedgwick County. Today, we're down below 0.5 mils. It actually had gone up to 0.9 mils, but it's come back down again. I think we're down to 0.49 mils right now. But that also includes staff salaries. I'm not sure exactly how to break this out, but I don't know if that's a fair calculation or not, because I can't really tell exactly what salaries should be in that calculation. If you simply look at the funding for the 15 programs identified by Department of Aging that we fund through property tax mill levy, and you calculate that out, it's about 0.23 mil for the property tax funds for those 15 programs. Now, most of those, 14 of them, actually have other revenues. They're not solely funded by the county. So 14 out of those have other revenues, and so we provide match money or whatever to make those programs acceptable and usable in Sedgwick County. The 15th of those priorities is senior centers. By the way, in the writings back in 1982, senior centers are mentioned, and they had mentioned 7 priorities, and out of those 7 priorities, senior centers are mentioned 3 times. For example, nutrition programs administered by senior centers. It is a fact that our nutrition programs are administered through senior centers across our county. If senior centers didn't exist, that program, I don't know how logistically how you would administrate that program. Having said that, like it or not, that mill levy passed. Unless we want to put another ballot measure out there and ask the people once again, we have an internal mandate to do what that said. Now, the legal interpretation is very simple, black and white. They said, are we, in fact, doing what it says? Our black and white interpretation of that is it only limits us to 1 mil. You don't have to spend any money, and your maximum you can spend is 1 mil on aging service or programs for the elderly. That's the legal analysis of that right now. But going back to the original intent by the people that wrote that document, the county commissioners themselves wrote letters in support explaining what they wanted to do with this. It's based on the 1974 law. We were the 57th or 58th county in the state that passed this. And it was 8 years after the state passed the law. 8 years later, we passed our mill levy program. It's clearly a tax increase to fund seniors. And the county actually demonstrated that by adding 0.7 mils. In fact, the mill levy went up over 3 mils that following year. But they dedicated 0.7 mils to senior programs at that time. Here's my point. We have the revenues. We have an agreement. These folks have demonstrated performance measures. As a conservative Republican, I think performance-based funding actually is one of my things I really like, because you fund the things that work and you don't fund the things that don't work. I'll talk about that later. I think there's going to be a motion for some money for a youth program coming up here, and I'd like to make the point that if it works, it's worthy of funding. If it doesn't work, we should not fund it. So whether the programs work or not is really a key. And as a conservative Republican, I think that performance-based funding actually is a good way to make sure we're getting bang for the buck. We're actually making a difference in the community for the things that people support. So with that in mind, I asked staff, and unfortunately 2 of the senior centers did not put in the paperwork, I understand, although I think they're qualified. They did not put in the paperwork, and they're not really on this list. So I'm going to make a simple motion. My motion is we would transfer $78,000 of budget authority from the operating reserve to the Division of Age and Senior Centers program and allocate full funding to senior centers based on senior center standards. This includes an additional $7,000 each to Hayesville and Oaklawn, an additional, by the way, I think that last sentence is incorrect. $78,000. It breaks out, let me give you the exact numbers here. It's $17,000 for 2 of those and $22,000 more for the other 2 of those. I think it's, Lindsay, you can please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's $17,000 for Hayesville and Oaklawn and $22,000 for Hayesville and Oaklawn, and $17,000 more for Mulvane and Clearwater, and that should add up to $78,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
My apologies.
So that is my motion, and I hope that's clear. Thank you.
We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, can I clarify? $17,000 for Hayesville and Oaklawn each?
No, it's $22,000 for Hayesville and Oaklawn, and $17,000 more for Mulvane and Clearwater. And if you add that up, that should be $78,000.
All right.
And that's full funding. And by the way, this is less than the person that testified this morning at public comment was referencing a number over $100,000 being 23 cents on a $100,000 home. So it's actually less than that if you just do the $78,000 this year. Just for record, 1 mil generates about $4.6 million in Sedgwick County. So you can do the math. $78,000 out of $4.6 million is a pretty small mill levy.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Unruh.
Just clarification. I think our legal staff's checking this out, but what are the senior centers that are proposed for increases? Which ones are they?
Oaklawn, Mulvane, Hayesville, and Clearwater. Bel Air pulled out. They didn't want the increase. They didn't ask for it, and the other 2 senior centers did not put in the paperwork. That would be Valley Center and Park City. So based on our timeline, they would be eligible in 2020, but they're not eligible this year because they didn't submit the paperwork. I think they've met the performance measures, but they did not submit the right paperwork at the right time, and therefore they're about a year behind.
So this is somewhat arbitrary picking and choosing.
No, sir. These 4 senior centers went through the process. They were analyzed by our staff. They verified they met the performance measures. It's based on the agreement that we put out in mid-2000s. This is not arbitrary. It's based on those that are working, those that are being used by seniors, those are delivering services that meet the performance measures. We're simply putting them back into the proper funding based on the agreement that we passed in the mid-2000s.
And these 3 are in your district? 3 of them are in your district?
No, sir. 2 of them are in my district. 2 of them are in Commissioner O'Donnell's district.
2 and 2? Okay. That's all I had.
Hey, Commissioner Ranzo.
Well, the problem that I have is this list here that we have for senior services that the county is providing basically $1.3 million to. There's 15 programs, and staff has ranked them in priority, and senior centers is the lowest priority, not because they're not important, but because all the services that are higher than that provide direct services to people that are just very close to going in a nursing home. And they have suggested to us that if we have additional funds to give to senior services, that we put that money into some higher priority programs. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lindsay, I think we are putting another $100,000 into senior service programs that are at a higher priority. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So we are increasing funding for seniors by $100,000 in some of these other programs, and I fully support that. I have for some time thought that with respect to the senior center funding, it's also important to note that even though senior centers is number 15 on the list, they get about 48 to 49% of the total funding to begin with. So I just have a hard time going against staff recommendations in this particular instance to give more money to things that are on the lowest priority when we should be giving it to the highest priority. I think we need to look at the formula and consider. We need to find a way to reallocate the existing funds somehow and come up with a different formula. I think we need to look at some of the requirements that we put on the senior center that may be driving up the cost unnecessarily, give them some more flexibility. I also think we need to look at some best practices that, and there's a wide range of practices that senior centers do to help supplement their income, because this funding was never intended to be the sole source of funding, and some senior centers do a better job of implementing a variety of strategies to increase the amount of money they bring in, and others don't. I think we need to have some recommendations and put that out there for everyone to see. And we can't just keep the way we are, lock people in forever, but I think we need to look at a way to reallocate the existing ones because I just can't. I understand, you know, I think the formula that we have had in the past puts us in a creates an expectation that's not sustainable, given the fact that we have higher priority programs with respect to seniors that probably does need the money first. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Commissioner Unruh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think the comments by Commissioner Ranzau are right on, and I know that he has worked on a funding formula that may be, after we've analyzed it, something we want to implement rather than the formula that currently exists. But I believe it's going to take some time to look at it, analyze it, and see what the long-term impacts are and how does it fit in our budget. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to just read a statement, and then I'd like to make a substitute motion to the substitute motion that's a substitute for the underlying motion. And so I'd like to, let me read this, and then I'll make a substitute motion. We've heard much discussion the last month or two about our aging programs, and it is especially about senior centers. It's clear that senior centers are valued in our community, and we share that appreciation. With that said, this 2019 budget continues to address the restoration of prior reductions which had been primarily focused on direct aging services. and which generally held senior centers at flat funding levels. So we've had some reductions, and the senior centers have stayed flat. The recommended budget includes $100,000 in additional funding for in-home, community-based, and physical disability services. In the coming weeks, the Aging Advisory Board can work with staff to determine how to allocate that additional funding in the most effective and efficient manner, and I'm told that that is on their agenda, and they will work towards that allocation. Requests for that additional funding are for services that help our seniors with some of their greatest needs and include programs like meal services, medication services, in-home behavioral health services, and some other services that we provide, but important, necessary personal services. So my motion is to set a cap on the senior center funding now and freezing the funding for 2019. And then we can move forward with our budget. But given this additional support for aging services that I described, I move that we set a cap on senior service funding at $620,000 indefinitely and freeze funding for senior service at current level for the 2019 budget year. Further, I move that we direct staff to evaluate allocation models for senior center funding and bring the results to this board for consideration as part of the 2020 budget process. Finally, I move to end the discussion on senior center funding for today's purpose of adopting the 2019 Sedgwick County budget.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I will second the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sorry, I was on.
Commissioner Howell?
Yeah, that was a very detailed motion. Is there a way I can have a copy of that so I can understand what's being voted on right now?
You may.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to indulge you for just about a moment to let me read through this and see if I understand what we're voting on here. So the cap of $620,000 indefinitely, what programs would that fund or not fund? I mean, what is that dedicated towards?
That is the contractual amount that's allocated in the budget for senior centers.
Is that the current amount that's in the budget this
Yes.
year? So if you subtract out senior centers, that's the amount that's left on the sheet. This is for everything else except for senior centers. It's 600.
Well, the senior centers themselves altogether receive $620,000 at current funding levels. And so this motion would freeze funding for senior centers at current levels. There is in the budget book an additional $15,000, but that is for the staff support, and so that part would not be included in this motion. It is just the contractual amounts that go to senior centers.
Okay. All right. So just a comment then. And by the way, I do have another motion in just a moment. So if this one passes, I guess this would preclude my next motion. But with respect to what Commissioner Ranzau said, the Aging Advisory Board needs to make recommendations to us. It was clear back in 1982 that we empowered the Aging Advisory Council, I think it was called at the time, empowered them to be fully aware of what our aging service needs were in this community, and they were supposed to set the priorities and make budget recommendations. And again, subject to our funding ability up to $1 million, we were essentially obligated to fund those programs. We had discretion, and it was our final approval, but that should have came from the senior centers, from the Senior Advisory Council to the Commission. Unfortunately, that's not happening today. That step is completely different. The Aging Advisory Board, I think, receives information, but their input to the process isn't getting upstream. It just isn't going anywhere. If there's other programs need more funding, more commodity distribution, or more health screenings, or whatever the other things are, I think we have to hear those requests. I don't know that we would say no to any of those things. As far as I know, we're providing the necessary funding to meet the requests of every one of those 14 items. And although senior centers may be the last on this list, it was mentioned 3 times in the original ballot question. They are critically important. We're not the only funder of senior centers. Most of these receive funding from their cities that they sit in, except for Wichita. So we're not the only funder. A lot of these other programs we fund, we are matching grant money. There's federal and state dollars that flows into those programs, and we it's required we provide some local match, and we are doing that to make those programs work. But if those programs need more funds, then we ought to consider doing those things. But senior centers, although we are probably the largest amount of revenue that they receive overall, we're not the only funder of those. They do receive fee money from the users, as well as the cities provide funding as well. And cities have actually stepped up. The funds have actually gone up by, I think, every city I'm looking at. The cities have actually increased their funding for these senior centers. And so, to the extent that we have the revenue available, I think this is really arbitrary. We could go ahead and fund the formula and still do the rest of what you asked for. In other words, do a review and change the formula if that's what we want to do. But to draw a line in the sand, as we have for years and years, to me is not the right action here today. I recalculated the $78,000 is a 0.16. Sorry, it's a 0.016 mil is what I come up with. I think that's correct. But nevertheless, it's a very small amount of money, and compared to our budget. So I would urge us not to do this. And my next motion would be for, just to let you know, my next motion would be for $5,000 for the 4 senior centers only. That would be partial funding. It would not be what they deserve, but it would be enough to get them moving in the right direction. So just to let you know what my next motion would be. And thank you for the chance to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I support the substitute to the substitute, whichever version we're on right now. We are adding $100,000 to senior services overall in the budget, and we provided in the motion made by Commissioner Unruh direction to take a look at what the formulas need to be. We keep having discussions constantly about how these formulas should work. We need to totally review those, and that's what this substitute to the substitute motion does. So I am fully in support of that. I know Commissioner Ranzau has put forth some recommendations, and we need the folks to take a look at this recommended motion and come up with some solutions for us so that we don't go through this same discussion as we prepare our 2020 budget. Well, Madam Clerk, call the roll on the substitute to the which version are we on? Commissioner Unruh's substitute.
Correct, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No.
Commissioner Ranzau?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
No.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Hey, Commissioner Ranzau, I think you need to make another motion, though.
Yes,
Don't you?
because the adoption of a substitute wipes out any previously made motions. So but you can renew them. So if you've got something.
So far, we've only passed part of the budget.
Well, we haven't passed any of it. I guess I took his motion to be
Oh,
an
that's right.
amendment to his motion.
That's correct. I'm sorry.
So now we have your motion, right?
Yes, I think my motion on the full budget.
Yeah.
As amended by what, well, I guess,
No, we're back to the substitute to your motion.
yes.
Right.
Correct? Everybody, Mr. Yost, you agree we're back to the substitute to Commissioner Ranzau's motion?
Correct. That would be fine.
Which now includes the
CRP.
motion that just passed.
That's correct.
Correct.
Though I don't think it really changes the numbers any.
Correct.
Didn't change the numbers any.
Okay.
Okay? Discussion, Commissioner Ranzau.
Okay, so now we're back on a motion to pass the entire budget, not splitting it out into 2.
Correct.
So that leaves me, I either vote for all of it or I have to vote no. So I have, multiple issues with some of the CIP program. First of all, the R342, which has been removed from the CI program, is not something I support. That allows a commissioner to identify 1 mile of cold mix of gravel road for replacement in each district every other year. And I don't believe staff should have been able to remove this project from the CIP. Also, I have concerns about some of our bond funding. We had a plan to wean ourselves off some of the unnecessary bonding that we were doing for roads and bridges, but now some of that's been put back in, unfortunately. And This is a sort of issue that I've been working on because I think it affects our long-term financial sustainability, I guess, as we move forward. We've made some progress in the recent years in some other areas. You know, we need to bond things that's appropriate and not bond things that aren't appropriate. With respect to roads and bridges, you know, we're doing $4 million a year, but because of the habitual borrowing, we're now spending $5.7 million in principal and interest. Okay, so we're getting $4 million worth of road projects, but we're spending $5.7 million in cash to pay all the bond and interest payments because we've dug ourselves into a hole. If we could work ourselves out of it, which we did have a plan to do that, we could get to the point where we'd have $4 million for roads and bridges and $1.7 million for other stuff. That is a long-term problem that needs to be addressed. Additionally, I've continued to say that we need to have a more stable and consistent way to fund bond projects and maybe even some equipment projects, either a set amount each year or a mill levy like the city of Wichita does. I've discussed this multiple years. We continue to not have that situation addressed in our budget. So we just go from year to year and just kind of hobble along. I think we could, this is really one of the last big hurdles or issues that I think need to be addressed to help our long-term sustainability from our budget. And it's a big enough, when you put all the stuff together, it's big enough that I'd hope we could separate that out, and I was going to vote against the bond funding portion of the CIP, but since I can't do that, I will oppose this budget, even though I support a large portion of it, to include the motion that we just voted for. But I want to continue to register my concerns in this area and hope that it'll continue to further a dialogue that will improve things in the future, similar to what has happened in the fire district. We had some issues, discussions, and we had some no votes there, but we continue to push the issue and got to the point where I think we're in a better place now. And like I say, we have made some significant progress here in the county's budget, but we still have some work to go in this particular area, and I'll continue to advocate for that. And for those reasons, I won't be supportive of this motion today.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzau?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
No.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye.
We have a budget.
We have a budget. Okay. Next item, please.
Item I, public hearing to adopt the International Residential Code 2018 edition with amendments.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Chris Laborman, MABCD. This is a public hearing, and as stated, it is to adopt Article 2 or amend Article 2, Section 4 of our UBTC, which is the International Residential Code. Residential only, no commercial impact here. That will be later. The latest adoption of the residential code took place in May of 2015. That was the 2012 IRC, and it included 100 amendments. This version is the 2018. We did elect to skip the 2015 code, go to 18, and it includes 38 amendments. We are also requesting...
Chris, just a minute. I know Lindsay and her staff are leaving. They've been working for 6 or 8 months on this budget, and I just want to tell them thank you for all the hard work. It really came down to one very controversial item on it at the end, and I sincerely appreciate all the work. I wanted to make sure before they left the room that I told them thank you very much for everything. Sorry about that. They were all leaving, and I wanted to make sure I told them how much we appreciate their work.
No problem, Chairman. I'll second that. Thanks to you and your team, Lindsay. We do appreciate it as staff. Yes, this is the 2018 IRC, which includes 38 amendments. We're asking to adopt one appendix out of that manual, and that is the one that impacts tiny homes or makes allowances for tiny houses. So a great deal, or the reason for that vast reduction, 3 reasons for that vast reduction in amendments. One is we're happy to say that a lot of our prior amendments have been incorporated into the new baseline code book. So that's something we're very happy with. We also did some consolidation within our UBTC. We had some outlying areas, and then as you'll see on the next slide, that takes us into the third portion of this and the way that the I-codes work together. We were able to consolidate several areas and then also eliminate some redundant areas where we were repeating amendments in both the residential code and the applicable trades codes. So with that, as stated, the one thing we really like about the I-code or the family of I-codes is how they coordinate. This will include the 2015 plumbing code, 2015 mechanical, and the 2015 fuel gas code, as well as the 2017 National Electrical Code, which we've all adopted. We are working the 18 adoptions on a few of those, as I believe you all are aware, and that part of the coordination was to ensure that none of that would conflict. So as we update those to 18, we see no issues there. This does cover Sedgwick County and the City of Wichita. It also will include the 18 smaller cities that we contract with, as well as the contract work we do for Butler and Sumner counties. We also are pleased to report that our contractors have been very cooperative with these codes. We've had a lot of success. Our home builders seem to be very happy with them. We've seen no safety, no management issues, and that includes those areas where the codes have relaxed a little bit in recent years. You've seen also that we were willing to make a few of those changes prior to actually adopting the full code in order to support the Parade of Homes and some of the WABA Home Show, some of those initiatives specifically with handrails. The amendments, as we see here, definitely increase our manageability of the code by reducing the volume and the amount of paper we're looking at there. The adoption process did go through the Board of Code Standards and Appeals. They reviewed it and voted unanimously in support. Wichita Area Builders Association Code Review Committee also voted in support of this and was also very integral to the review committee, a few of their members serving on the actual subcommittee that presented the code. As stated, very, very happy to have that reduction in amendments. We will also, again, be looking to adopt the Appendix Q, and we do have no indication that staff, community, or any industry has a problem with anything we're supporting presenting today or in full support. So to that end, I did not include anything for this on specific amendments. Again, most of those were administrative changes just to ensure numbering and position within the code, reducing redundancy. We have nothing that is more restrictive than we've seen in our previous codes. What I did include for presentation is some discussion on the tiny houses. So those will be defined in our jurisdiction as a home that is 500 square feet or less in floor area. That does not include the lofts, and the lofts are normally the sleeping areas. Part of this is to realize that, of course, fire safety is what initiates a lot of our code. So this did initiate with the National Fire Protection Service. And then now has been adopted into building. We expect that this appendix will probably become a portion of the baseline code in the next version or two, and then gives us some criteria to accommodate and permit and inspect specific to those clearances in those areas. So this provision relaxes several of those code requirements that would apply to a single dwelling unit on a permanent foundation. As I think you also know, these are permitted today. So anytime a tiny home comes to us, it is an individual effort to permit and create the criteria for that house. So this would provide a standardized set of that criteria that, again, at this point, the community has reviewed and all agrees to. Specific on those impacts the stairs, handrails, and the headroom requirements. It allows ladders versus requiring stairs in those homes. Does reduce ceiling height requirements for the lofts, and it allows for escape out of the roof in the event of a fire from the loft. So one thing to make clear, as I know there have been questions and some concerns on this, by putting this in the code, we are not changing, or this does not in any way impact the zoning associated with where a tiny home can be located. So any zoning or private covenants that would restrict this type of build, this type of home, those remain in place, those processes must still be followed. If someone receives that permission, they are authorized to, whether it be a development or an individual home, then this would allow us a standardized permitting process, again with community endorsed and agreed upon standards, versus having to take each of those as a separate variance or an individual process to review separately the engineering, etc., and put a permit into place for that home. Gives us the then obviously the criteria to inspect with. So our stance, and it is the stance of WABA, Mr. Gallion is not here today, he's traveling, but he spoke with me this morning to reiterate that our position on this is we want this in the code in order to set those standards. Therefore, whether it be a planning commission or an elected official decision associated with placement of tiny homes, it would give you the criteria you need to know what you're deciding on. We see that as a big gain with this as well. So with that, and pending any questions, I recommend, commissioners, that we accept any public comment, close the hearing, and adopt the resolution with the proposed code and amendments.
Good. Thank you, Chris. First of all, before I open up the public agenda, do any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Labor? Seeing none, I'd like to open public hearing on adoption of the International Residential Code 2018 edition with amendments. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this issue? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on the adoption of the International Residential Code? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak? Seeing none, I'd like to close the public hearing. I make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple questions for Mr. Labor. I just wanted to see if there's anybody from the audience wanted to speak first. That's fine. Mr. Labor, just a couple of quick questions. There's obviously an item in the news right now on the micro-mansion development out on 143rd Street out east, and I wanted to see how this might, how this decision might impact what's going on out there. So, if we don't adopt this, is that development still able to go in as planned?
That is correct, and that obviously, I think Mr. Miller is still here. Oh, Dale, looks like Dale left, but that would be according to zoning. I know Justin Wagner is here. He could speak to that if we want more details, but yes, the zoning allows that. So that is separate from our permitting process.
And in terms of the construction, the plan for the home, it might, without some of these allowances, it potentially would change if we held them to the normal building standards. But this allows them to do some things differently because it's considered a tiny home. But there's a variance opportunity. Can you please talk about that?
Well, and that's a good question, Commissioner. So they are actually still allowed to build the homes according to this now. The difference would be that on each individual case, they would come to us, request use of the Appendix Q, request any other stipulations with that, and MABCD would individually permit that. Write a permit for that. So this just gives them standardized criteria, gives us a standardized process, definitely a lot more efficient than if in each case we have to establish or really provide a letter is what we do to allow them use of those criteria.
So really, if they wanted to go through the variance process, they could get pretty much anything in Appendix Q done if they wanted, and it's basically administratively approved, doesn't go to MAPC or anything like that.
And that is correct. Once MAPCD, zoning, any of those stipulations are taken care of, there would be no legal reason for me to not permit that home.
So I understand right now there's about 90 homes that are planned, maybe a little bit more, I don't know, but to do variances on that many homes would take a lot of time, and because you charge per square foot for your costs for your inspections are based on square footage, this would actually be a pretty big hit to your office, I would assume.
That is correct, Commissioner.
Okay, so by adopting this, it doesn't really change what they can do, but it does make your office more efficient.
Exactly. Yes,
okay,
sir.
So I don't want to connect this with whether this is supportive or opposing or supporting that development, because I think it's unrelated, frankly. I think that can go forward regardless of whether we adopt this or not. I do think this is about efficiency in your office. And I would also say that tiny home villages are trending across the nation. This is one in our community that's happening imminently, but I've heard of at least 3 others that potentially could happen. So clearly we need to get this on our books in terms of how we deal with these things, and so I would be supportive of this today. Only one other comment, and that would be I do think there ought to be potentially some zoning updates to help determine where tiny home villages can be located within the community. I mean, we regulate where mobile homes can go or multifamily housing can go and things like that. To me, this is almost its own class, and so in my opinion, it should have its own zoning designation, and we ought to have discussions, and public ought to have a chance to weigh in on those zoning decisions. But that's not what this is about today. So with that, I would be supportive of this amendment. Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Item J, accept the donations totaling $810 for the COMCARE'S Community Crisis Center.
Joan, welcome.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Joan Temney with ComCare. I'm here today again because three individuals in our community lost their life to suicide earlier this year. The family of Suzanne Milan came to our crisis program in late July to share that their daughter had lost her struggle or battle with depression. Suzanne was just 40 years old at the time of her death. Suzanne's family requested that any donations be designated to the Community Crisis Center, as Suzanne had utilized and valued the services she received from us in the past. We also have an additional donation in memory of Abram Parks, who we've talked about earlier this year, and one to honor Larry Klein. In total, we received 15 donations totaling $810. As with any opportunity with a donation for suicide prevention awareness, I just want to take the opportunity to educate everyone to the fact that suicide doesn't discriminate by any demographic in our community, and that mental illness impacts 1 in 4 people. The number of deaths due to suicide locally and nationally is on the rise. I am proud to say that at ComCare we have staff trained to teach and deliver mental health first aid, which offers tools to citizens in our community to start conversations and to listen compassionately to someone who has thoughts of suicide, and to give them information around community resources where they can get help. Our Community Crisis Center is here to help. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People can pick up the phone and call and reach out. They could walk in at any time. If anybody in the community is worried about someone, let them know you care, and ask if they're thinking about death, and then hook them up with somebody who can and help them and treat them. So I'm here to ask that you accept the donations and authorize the chairman to sign the letters of appreciation.
Thank you very much, Joan, and thank you for bringing this donation to our attention. The Community Crisis Center impacts people every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a study recently that it has an impact of something like $18 million a year. Is that what I've heard on our community on savings?
Oh, yes, on the cost avoidance study, that it saves local hospitals, the Sheriff's Office, WPD, and other people that intervene with this population. By bringing them to the Crisis Center, it helps offset about $18 million a year.
That's significant, not only the cost savings, but more importantly, the impact on our citizens that need that service. So I think it's great that we have a donation. I move that we acknowledge the donation and authorize me to sign a letter of appreciation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Item K, consideration of a grant in the amount of $7,559,132 for COMCARE'S participating community mental health center agreement.
Yes, Joan Tammany again with ComCare. I'm coming to you today for asking your consideration to accept the grant award, authorize the budget authority requested, and then to authorize the chairman to sign all the necessary documents. This is grant funding that we get from the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services. This year it's in the amount of $7,559,132. It's our participating community mental health center contract that occurs each year and is a primary funding source or funding contract for ComCare. The agreement that we're asking you to authorize and sign describes our responsibilities as a community mental health center. It defines the compensation amount and our reporting obligations to the state. The funding, it pays for the infrastructure for ComCare, such as salaries and benefits for the employees who deliver direct services and other services to the organization. I do want to just point out that there's very few changes in the contract from a language perspective. The only language changes in there are things that we, the community mental health centers in the state of Kansas, asked for in terms of clarification points. And then there are some changes in our reporting templates that we submit each month for payment. The grant award is an increase from the previous year in the total of $804,547, which is a good thing. We had lost some funding last year on the federal side, and this restores some of that and gives us a little extra in terms of the grant funding. I just want to take the opportunity. I want to share that ComCare has an exceptional reputation for quality of care that we provide to our community, and we're recognized for that at both the state level and amongst our peers nationally, and I don't think we ever take the opportunity to brag on ourselves, so I wanted to do that. We strive to be progressive, we utilize best practices, and we're fortunate the work we do draws to us a very dedicated and passionate workforce that believes in helping others. So I'm proud of what we do. I'm proud of the workforce we have. I want to thank them publicly for what they do. What we do matters. We save lives and we improve lives in our community. So I'm asking that you accept the grant award, authorize the budget authority for the funding, and then authorize the chairman to sign all the documents associated with this grant.
Thank you, Joan, and we are very proud of what you all do in ComCare. We sincerely appreciate the impact that you have. Before I open this up for the rest of the commissioners, one thing I always try and do is to recognize any elected officials that are in the audience, and I just noticed that City Councilman Pete Meitzner has joined us in the audience. We want to welcome him to our meeting today, and thank you for being here. Commissioners, we have a proposal. What is the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the grant award, authorize the budget authority request, authorize the chairman to sign or his designee to sign all necessary documents.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item L, consideration of a grant in the amount of $375,695 for the 2018 Edward J. Burns Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, 2018 Safe and Secure Community Project.
Thank you. Heather, welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Dennis and Commissioners. I'm Heather Zaragoza, County Manager's Office Management Intern. Today I'm going to present to you the 2018 Edward J. BYRNE's Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, also known as the JAG Grant. And the JAG Grant provides federal funding to divisions and departments in the criminal justice system. Total funds for 2017 were $344,963. Sedgwick County share was $172,481. The difference from last year to this year was a total of $30,732 total funds, which is $15,366 of the county. Currently, the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County are classified as disparate jurisdictions, which means they receive funding in one lump sum, and then that sum is divided through a memorandum of understanding between the city and the county. The total amount of funding available for both jurisdictions for 2018 were $375,695. Sedgwick County and the City of Wichita have decided to split that amount 50-50, and that gives our shares $187,847.50. Today, in addition to accepting staff's recommendations to accept this grant, we ask that you conduct a public hearing and accept public comments required by the grant by the United States Department of Justice. Here is the amounts requested from the departments and what was recommended from the advisory board. The total amounts requested for 2018 was $199,357.85. The request for last year was $207,281.36. The remaining information will cover what the specific departments will get through the JAG grant. The first one is the Sheriff's Department. Their class that's about to come up has 30 detention deputies as well as 13 road patrol deputies. They're requesting that we replace their current MCTs with these laptops to assist with that. The next one would be for their drone, the licensing for the drone. They can reconstruct roads with the drone, so the accident scenes won't have to be closed as long. They can go in, fly the drone, get the pictures and the measurements they need, and then go back and put it in with their mapping software. The next item on the sheriff's is for a UV flare kit. So this item will allow for trace evidence to be detected. The next is for the cuff port pass-through systems. Currently, the jail has 697 cell doors. Out of those, 305 currently have this system in use. They requested 5. In the sheriff's budget, they are going to be adding another 10. So that way we can get it to where the inmates that are violent and possibly disruptive will not be a threat to the inmates. The other priority on this slide is the replacements of the MCTs. In April of this year, the MCTs, they went out of warranty. So anytime that the Sheriff's Department has to call to even speak to somebody, they have to pay $60. And I think that Colonel Powell said one of the cheapest ones that they've had to replace for the MCT was $1,000, just because of the fact they're not under warranty. So the MCTs currently use Windows 7 as of January 2020. That will no longer be used. The current MCTs are no longer being produced by Dell, so this will be the new system that will have to go in all of the patrol cars. The jail needs to expand their riot gear. Currently, some of the deputies cannot be sized in the riot suits based off of weight and size. The other items in the riot gear do have expiration dates, and some of them are replacing ones that are actually safer to use indoors. So we're taking out the gear that's not available, like that's not as good as the new items would be for indoor capabilities. The total sheriff's amount request is $77,268.97. Sorry. 41% of that is the total amount allocated for Sedgwick County for the JAG grant. The Forensic Science Center, all of their items are going to be replacement except for one of their priorities. The first priority that they have is replacing a piece of equipment that is extremely outdated, and if that goes down, we will no longer be able to do types of analyses that have to do with alcohol and other liquids that are submitted to the lab. The second one on their priority is the pipette fillers, and the one that they have is aging, and so they're requesting 2, one to replace the aging one and then one to have as a backup for the DNA section. The next one is not replacing current technology. It is, however, advancing their technology in their conference room, so that way they can have enhanced autopsy photos, x-rays, crime scenes when they do conferences from law enforcement and the DA. Currently, a whole bunch of people stand around one computer monitor, and that's how they do their briefings. The next one is their purification system that will assist with DNA. The current orbital rotator, which they're requesting to replace, is 20 years old and is currently breaking down. This machine does the alcohol analysis, and if it's not replaced, they will not be able to perform alcohol analysis for the county. Their last request is 2 computers plus 2 of the Microsoft programming. Their current computers are over 10 years old, so these 2 would actually replace 2 of the ones that they have. Next is the district attorney. They are requesting a computer. They have specific requests for it. This one will actually be used by multiple attorneys in the system. It will not be just for one specific attorney. And they are also requesting a large printer so that way they can print out their own pictures or graphs or any other items that they will need for court in their office instead of having to use the print shop or GIS. I don't remember which one. The DA's total request is $6,300.25, which is 3% of the allocated JAG amount for the county. Corrections asked for bulk amounts of items. They needed $20,000. $20,000 is what they requested for their drug testing as well as electronic monitoring. They were given a little bit extra based off of what was left. Effective July 1st, House Bill 2458 is allowing level 4 drug offenders to participate in the Senate Bill 123, which will add an additional 80 to 100 clients in community corrections, but it does not add any funding. Currently, it's estimated that county corrections does about 2,000 drug tests per month, and this will buy about approximately 1 month's worth of testing. Their total request was $40,058.53, which is 21% of the JAG's allocated amount to Sedgwick County. The courthouse police are requesting the walk-through metal detectors, and those metal detectors will actually go to the north side of the courthouse lobby. Those are the ones that are utilized the most. They were purchased in 1997, and they have scanned approximately 9.4 million people. They are also asking for some handheld scanners and licensing to be able to use all of the computer or all of the camera systems that could actually tap into one location here at the courthouse. They use that system for the tag office, this building, the Reagan building, Munger, and the old courthouse, the historic courthouse. At this time, if there are no questions, I recommend that we open the public hearing, accept public comments, then close the public hearing, approve the grant application related agreement with the City of Wichita, authorize the chairman or his designee to submit the application through the Justice Department grants management system, execute all grant documents, including a grant award agreement containing substantially the same terms and conditions of application above the establishment, approve the establishment of the budget authority at the time of the grant is executed. And if you have any questions, I could answer, or there are also representatives from the department here at this time.
Thank you, Heather. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the presentation, and I look forward to this particular grant each year. I think it does a lot of great things in our community, and I just want to say, you read the motion, so I'd like to make you read the recommended action. I would make a motion we take the recommended action, but along with that, I just wanted to point out that it's a fascinating story to go read. This is a memorial to recognize Edward J. BYRNE, who was a law enforcement officer who was basically assassinated. So it's a fascinating story. It happened in 1988, I guess 30 years ago. So I think it's worthy of us to take just a moment to go back and read that. I won't read it right now, but I have done that already, and just want to say thank you to his family for making this possible today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before I open public hearing? Seeing none, I'd like to open the public hearing for the acceptance of the grant. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this issue? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this grant? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this grant? Seeing none, I'd like to close the public hearing. Commissioner Howe, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I would make a motion we take the recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Commissioner Unruh, you have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Heather, I just want to congratulate you and Marty on working through this process. All our criminal justice partners have priorities that they think are important, and they all come with a list. But it's amazing how collegial that all the partners in our criminal justice system work together to try to effectively use this grant money in the best way possible. And there's a little bit of give and take, but I've been involved 2 or 3 times in this process, and every time I'm impressed by how all the components in our criminal justice system are sensitive to one another's needs, and they work together well, and it's really a fun process, maybe I should say it that way. But anyway, thanks for you and Marty's leadership.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye.
Thank
you very much, Heather. Next item, please.
Item M, consideration of Federal Victims of Crime Act grant in the amount of $70,000, funding through the Governor's Grant Program.
Morning, Lieutenant.
Morning, Commissioners. In 2013, the Sheriff's Office was one of several community partners who joined together to form the Coordinated Community Response Team. This multidisciplinary team was established as a formal, comprehensive, collaborative, and victim-centered response to domestic violence and sexual violence. Through our work with these community and criminal justice agencies, it became clear that the Sheriff's Office lacked some of the same level of victim advocacy as some of our community partners. Of the 10 community partners who are part of the Coordinated Community Response Team, the Sheriff's Office is the only agency that does not have a victim advocate assigned to or working within its agency. Having an advocate immediately available to victims at the time of crisis is very important because it greatly increases the likelihood of connecting that victim to other services, especially for citizens that live outside the city of Wichita, which is where most of the victim advocacy, well, actually all of the victim advocacy is located. In 2016, the Sheriff's Office utilized a summer intern to advocate for victims of crime. The intern provided information, assistance, and advocacy to victims and made a noticeable positive impact. The Sheriff's Office identified this gap in victim services as a priority in our 2017-2020 strategic plan, which seeks to identify funding for the implementation of a victim advocate within the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office. The Victim of Crimes Act, or VOCA, grant was established to provide direct services to victims of crime. The VOCA grant is an 80-20 match with 80% is provided by the grant and 20% from the applicant agency. The VOCA grant is administered by the Kansas Governor's Grant Program, and if awarded this grant, it would allow for the establishment of a victim advocate for the Sheriff's Office. The victim advocate would act as a first responder for victims, providing crisis response in collaboration with other community service providers. With your support, the Sheriff's Office would like to submit to the 2019 Victims of Crime Act grant. There is one correction on the numbers. I know the agenda shows 70 and a 14 split. Actual correct math is 67,200 and with a match of 16,800. I would recommend that the approval of the application for the grant, and if awarded, authorize acceptance of the grant, the establishment of budgetary authority as provided in the financial consideration sections of this request, and implementation of staffing table changes identified in the personnel consideration section of this request. And I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Lieutenant Allen. Do we have any questions?
If not, Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we take that recommended action.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. Next item, please.
Item N, report of the Board of Bids and Contracts regular meeting of August 9th, 2018.
Morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Joe Thomas, Purchasing Director. The meeting of the Board of Bids and Contracts of August 9th, we have 7 items out of that meeting for your consideration. Item number 1 is the security guard services for COMCARE Treasurer's Office, and this recommendation is to accept the proposal from Smart Security Incorporated and establish contract pricing for 3 years with 2 one-year options to renew. The second item is the HIV test equipment and kits for the Division of Health. And this recommendation is to accept the quote from Biorad Laboratories Incorporated for the HIV test equipment and kits at the rates listed and establish contract pricing for 4 years. Item number 3 is storage hardware for information technology and support services. This recommendation is to utilize the NASPO master agreements ending in 134 and 115, which the state of Kansas did a participating contract number 40399AB. And this contract is good through March 31st, 2020. Item number 4, or 5, excuse me. No, item number 4. I'm going to skip. 4 comes after 3, right? Okay. Item number 4 is Avamar Data Domain Software and Equipment for Information Technology and Support Services. And this recommendation is to utilize a NASPO master agreement ending in 109, and this is State of Kansas participating contract 40403, and that's also good through March 31st, 2020. Now, item number 5, preventive maintenance and on-call services for backup generators for facilities. And this recommendation is to accept the low bid from Foley Equipment Company at the rates listed, and we're establishing contract pricing for 1 year with 4 one-year options to renew. Item number 6 is tax foreclosure title search services for the Treasurer's Office. This recommendation is to accept the low proposal from Security First Title, LLC, at the rates listed above for each search, and this will be good for 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew. In regards to item 7, which is merchant services, the recommendation is to defer this item, and we hope to bring this back to the Commission on September 12th. I'll try to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval of the items listed.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Do we have questions from the Commission? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendations of the Board of Bids and Contracts as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Joe. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Commissioners, Mike Scholes, County Manager. Recommend you approve consent agenda items Oscar through Yankee.
Thank you. Commissioner Ranzo?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve consent agenda items Oscar through Yankee except for item Quebec.
Which item?
Q.
Quebec. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to accept item Oscar through the Yankee with the exception of item Quebec. I'll second the motion, by the way. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Okay, I move that we approve item Quebec.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion, please. Commissioner Ranzo.
Yeah, this is a grant and an agreement with Vic Christie, which in general I support. It's designed to do follow-up care on their patients. The primary beneficiary is, of course, Vic Christie, although there are secondary benefits to the county. The issue that I have is that they're paying the money to the person doing this is our employee. I believe the person doing this should be their employee because they're the primary beneficiaries of this, and I'm concerned that as we go longer down the road that there will be this lead us to an effort to transition the responsibility for following up with their patients to the taxpayer, and that's something I can't support. So, like I say, in general, I support this partnership, but I do believe this employee should be a VA Christie employee, and so that's why I'll oppose this current situation unless we could somehow get that fixed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further comments? Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the comments of Commissioner Ranzo. I will support the motion to approve. I will not support a transitioning of this program to the county, but that's not what we're talking about today. So as it sits right now, this is a renewal. It's basically renewing what we're already currently doing, and for that reason, I'll be glad to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, because I made the motion, I would do support it, and we can control in the future if it looks like they want to transfer it to us So as commissioners, we have every ability to stop it if it becomes something that they want to transfer to us. So that's the reason I support the motion.
And
Commissioner Unruh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see Mr. Hadley here, but he could probably give us a comment on how the county benefits out of this.
Hey, good morning. Scott Hadley, EMS. Yes, commissioners. The county does have some residual benefit from this position. The predominant scope of practice is to help Via Christi patients, the congestive heart failure patients, transition into the community and manage their disease processes, which has been very successful. What we get out of that position is when they're not performing that work, they go out and visit some of our high utilizers. And just kind of give you an example, over a course of a year, prior to this person, top 5 utilizers, we made about 341 encounters. 90 days after our person went out and visited him, we only had 41 encounters. So it has helped us and helped our citizens in the community having this position. But yes, if it ever came to the point where it looked like they wanted to transition that to us, you always have to say no to that, and we don't have to support that position within the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Unruh?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you. Next item, please.
Legislative issues.
Mr. Yost, do we have anything for legislation?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. When are we going to start working on our legislative agenda?
Well, we had a staff meeting, as you know, yesterday. It seems like a long time ago. And the commission indicated some preferences as to communicating to Kansas Association of Counties what they ought to include in their agenda. But that's separate from what our platform would be, and I anticipate taking that up in September.
Sounds great. Okay. Next item, please.
Other?
Does any of the commissioners have anything for other? Commissioner Unruh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let folks know that I had the privilege of attending the grand opening of the Health Core Clinic on East 21st Street yesterday. It's just west of University, just west of Hillside. It's been a asset in our community for some time. They have rebranded a little bit. They have a beautiful new building and are able to provide medical services in kind of the method of a safety net clinic to not only citizens of that area, primarily 67214 zip code, but I think it'll have a regional impact. They provide medical services, dental services, behavioral health services, and pharmaceutical services, and they've got quite a staff and are really going to provide a positive impact in our community. And it's, as Sedgwick County Board of Health, I thought it'd be important for you all to know about this asset in the community. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to tell you all I really enjoyed an event that happened Saturday. It was the 60th anniversary of the Dockham sit-in, which is a part of Wichita's history. It was, I thought, well attended, and it allowed me the opportunity to understand a little bit deeper exactly what that event was all about. And I just want to say thank you to the community for bringing that together. I don't even know who organized it, but it was a pretty interesting event. I like that type of history because it helps me understand exactly where we came from. But I'm reminded that I'm proud of Kansas. As we started as a state, we actually had 4 state constitutions. There was a great big battle that happened about whether we would be a free state or a slave state, and thankfully the right decision was made there. But that was our beginnings. Then we have the Brown versus Board of Education history. Plus, we also have the women's right to vote, the women's suffrage that started in Kansas, and then the Dockham sit-in, which was the right for people to be served equally with people of different colors. And I just thought that this was a tremendous part of our history. And so I just want to say it was a great event. That happened 60 years ago. Last Saturday was the conclusion. I think they sat at that counter for 3 weeks before they were able to be served. But that actually began a movement in this nation that went across the city, then across the state, and then across the nation. That was the first sit-in in the nation. So anyway, just wanted to reflect on that. And then finally, just wanted to just let people know if they want to have some fun on Saturday, there is an Old Settlers Day parade. It's probably the biggest parade that happens in my district each year, and it's on this coming Saturday at 11 o'clock a.m. So that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Appreciate it. A couple of things I'd like to discuss since no one else has the light on right now. Yesterday I attended a meeting about homelessness, and it's really part of three problems that we have in this area. One is drug and alcohol abuse problem. Another is mental health problems, and they really are all tied together with homelessness in one way or another. So we have funded a couple positions here in the future to support mental health and the drug use, and I hope that we can also kind of address the homelessness as part of that somehow, because it all fits together. So they've got a little task force going on right now that I sat in on yesterday to talk about it, and it's the first steps, and hopefully we can see some things that happen in the future of that. Also last night, Commissioner Howell, Commissioner O'Donnell, and I were able to attend the 100th anniversary of Sedgwick County Farm Bureau. They had a great event last night. I think it was 15,000 members, something like that, that they announced. It's a huge organization that supports our farmers, and it guarantees that you and I can eat food every day that's safe and nourishing. So I want to thank all the farmers that we have across the nation. There are actually very few actual farmers that produce the food for our 330 million people and do it safely every day. So I want to thank them very much for what they do there. Also, Jeff Etling is in the back of the room, director of our zoo. Don't forget we have Jubilee coming up September the 9th, as I recall. 8th, I'm sorry, September 8th, coming up Saturday night at the zoo. Tickets up until the last day of this month are $135. If you wait until the last day of the month on, why, it's $150. So see any of the board members, or I'm sure that Mr. Etling has tickets that he'd be glad to sell you. But it supports our zoo. It's the #1 fundraising effort that we have every year for the zoo. So I want to make sure that I put a plug in for Jubilee coming up on September the 8th. Final thing is that I already said thank you very much to our staff. They worked tremendously hard over the last 6 or 8 months getting a budget together that I think passed today fairly smoothly. I know we have got differences of opinion from 5 different commissioners, and that's to be expected. But I appreciate the fact that all 5 of our commissioners worked together during this entire process to make sure that we are supporting the citizens in Sedgwick County. We've said it a lot of times that our main job is to take care of people. Not only our people that are members of our staff, but people in Sedgwick County. And all 5 of our commissioners take that job very seriously. We have differences of opinion on some things, but that's healthy. And I appreciate listening to each and every one of them as we move through this process. And when we come away from it, I know that we didn't all get exactly what we wanted every step of the way, but the bottom line is I think our citizens are well served, and that's what our job is here. So I sincerely appreciate all 5 of our commissioners for all the work that they did. I appreciate the staff, and I really do like the process that we went through over the last 6 months to get to where we're at today, because we learned a lot. I think we know better about what happens in Sedgwick County, and we can better serve our citizens. So I just want to tell everyone thank you very much for that. Does anyone else have anything to come before the commission today?